Seo-yeon was up before anyone. She always was. The estate was still dark at 6:15, the kind of dark that was not quite night anymore, but had not yet decided to be morning. The city outside the walls, making its shift in the gray-blue quiet that belonged to nobody and everybody simultaneously. She padded to the kitchen in bare feet, her hair loose from sleep, the bird journal under her arm, not because she needed it yet, but because it had become the thing she carried, the way other children carried. Stuffed animals, the documentation of the world as she understood it, the record that said, "I was here, I saw this, it mattered." She went to the cabinet. She stood on the step she had been standing on since she was 4.5, because she had refused, at 4.5, to wait until she was tall enough to reach without it. She took out 3 cups. She placed them on the table, 1, 2, 3, the same positions they had always occupied, the same methodical pressing of ceramic to wood that had been her morning ritual since she was 5 years old and had decided, without announcement or explanation, that the way you held a family together was to set a place for them every day before they woke up, and let the act of setting it be the thing that said, "You belong here? I am expecting you? This table is not complete without you." She placed the 3rd cup. She stood back and looked at the table. Then she went to the kitchen counter, where she had left something the night before, a folded piece of paper, deliberate, waiting for this morning. She unfolded it. She looked at it once. She walked back to the table and she placed it beside Min-jae's cup. Flat, visible, a drawing in careful colored pencil of 3 figures, standing in front of a house with birds above them and hands connected between them. She had written 3 names under the figures: Appa, Belle, Seo-yeon. She placed it there like a fact that had been true for a long time and simply needed a surface to rest on. She sat down. She opened the bird journal to a fresh page. She wrote the date at the top. She waited. At 6:43 Annabelle came in. She was still in her morning clothes, her natural hair in a loose bun that had not been arranged yet, the specific, unhurried quality of someone moving through the early hour before the day had made its demands. She stopped in the kitchen doorway when she saw Seo-yeon. She looked at the table, at the 3 cups, at the drawing beside the 3rd cup. She crossed the room. She looked at the drawing. She looked at Seo-yeon. Seo-yeon was writing Harold's preliminary morning observations in the journal and did not look up. "I made it last week," Seo-yeon said. "I thought it should be on the table." Annabelle looked at the drawing for a long moment. The 3 named figures, the house, the birds, the connected hands. She sat down in her chair. She did not say anything. She did not need to. At 7:23, Min-jae's footsteps came down the corridor. He came in. He looked at the table, the 3 cups, Seo-yeon writing, Annabelle, with her hands around her cup, looking at him as he entered. He looked at the drawing beside his cup. He stood at the edge of the kitchen for a moment, reading it not quickly, with the specific attention he gave to everything that mattered, the thing that said, "I am not going to let this pass without receiving it properly." He sat down. He picked up the drawing. He looked at it for a long time. The 3 figures, his name, her name, his daughter's name, the house behind them, the birds above, the hands connected. He set it back down carefully, centered, where Seo-yeon had placed it. He looked across the table at Annabelle. She looked at him. His eyes said something that his voice was still traveling toward. Her eyes received it. Seo-yeon, without looking up from the journal, "Harold is at the window. Hyunja is late this morning, which is unusual, and I am documenting it." Min-jae looked at his daughter. He poured his own coffee this morning. He reached for the pot himself, poured it, wrapped both hands around the cup, and he sat with his family in the kitchen in the morning that came after everything. The morning after the mother conversation, and the bird journal, and the 2 lines underlined, and the drawing was on the table, and the cups were in their places, and outside Haven Ridge was beginning its day. And inside this kitchen, the most important things were exactly where they were supposed to be. The drawing stayed on the table. It would stay there for the rest of the story. You watched part 2, and you came back for the ending. That is everything. Subscribe right now if you haven't, hit the notification bell, and share this final part with someone who has been watching this story, because what is coming in the next hour is going to close something in you that has been open since a corridor and a dropped laundry basket 2 years ago. This is part 3. This is the end. Let's go. Seo-yeon turned 7 the day before the drawing appeared on the table. The birthday happened quietly, the way the best things in this house happened, without announcement, without performance, with the specific warmth of people who had learned each other's rhythms completely. Mrs. Park made the cake. Ambw and Seo-yeon had baked the accompaniments on a Tuesday morning, the kitchen dusted with flour and the smell of cardamom, Seo-yeon issuing quality assessments on each batch with the authority of someone who had been conducting Tuesday baking for over a year and had developed rigorous standards. Min-jae came home early, not because anyone asked him to, because he had put it in his own calendar 6 weeks in advance, a private entry that said simply, Seo-yeon. He sat at the kitchen table and ate cake, and watched his daughter blow out 7 candles with the focused breath of someone who had been practicing. And when she looked up from the cake, her eyes went immediately to Ambw first, and then to him. And the look in them was the most complete thing he had seen in 7 years of her face. That evening, after Seo-yeon was in bed, he sat in the kitchen alone for a long time. He thought about 7 years, about the first night of her life, when she had been placed in his arms, and he had understood for the first time that there existed a category of feeling for which he had no adequate language, and which his entire professional architecture was entirely unequipped to handle. He had spent 7 years being adequate to the language he did have, efficient, present, protective, while the feeling waited. He looked at the 3 cups on the shelf. He looked at the space on the counter where the birthday cake had been. He thought, she is 7 years old, and she knows exactly what she has, and who belongs to her, and she has never once doubted that the people she chose would stay. She built a family by placing cups, and drawing pictures, and running down corridors, and asking questions other children would not have known to ask. She built it with the certainty of someone who had already seen how it ended, and was simply filling in the days between now and the arrival of the thing she already knew was true. He was still arriving. The drawing appeared on the table the next morning. 3 days after that, Ambw found herself standing in Seo-yeon's doorway at 11 p.m. She had not planned to go there. She had been walking the corridor toward her own room, and she stopped because the light under Seo-yeon's door was still on, and Seo-yeon's light was not supposed to be on at 11 p.m. She knocked softly. "Come in," Seo-yeon said. She was sitting up in bed with the bird journal open on her lap, and Mr. Kim tucked under one arm, the specific posture of a child who had something on her mind and was using documentation as a way of sitting with it. "It's late," Ambw said. "I know," Seo-yeon said. "I'm almost done." Ambw came in. She sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at the journal page, Harold's evening behavior, a new observation about Hyunja's roosting preference, a small pencil sketch of the window ledge with all 4 birds in their documented positions. At the bottom of the page, separated from the rest by a line, 2 words written and then crossed out thoroughly, unreadable. Ambw looked at them. "What did you write?" she asked. Seo-yeon looked at the crossed out words. "Something I'm not ready to say yet," she said. "I wrote it to practice. Then I crossed it out because it needs to be said out loud, not written down first." Ambw looked at her. "Okay," she said. She did not push. She simply sat on the edge of the bed and let the room be what it was. After a while, Seo-yeon closed the journal. "Belle," she said. "Yes," Ambw said. "Are you happy here?" she said. Not the real question, a preparatory question. The kind you ask to make sure the ground is solid enough for the one that follows. Ambw looked at her. "Yes," she said. "I am happy here, happier than I have been anywhere in a very long time." Seo-yeon absorbed this, filed it. "Good," she said. "I wanted to know." She lay down. She pulled the duvet up. "Good night, Belle." Good night, baby, Annabelle said. She turned off the light. She stood in the doorway for a moment in the dark. She understood, walking back down the corridor, that tomorrow was the day. She could feel it the way you feel weather before it arrives, not in what you see, but in the specific quality of the air. Tomorrow was the day. She had been in this house for over 2 years now. 2 years of kitchens and gardens and libraries and school pickups and Tuesday baking and bird journals and cups placed before anyone was awake. 2 years of building something she had not planned and could not undo and would not undo for anything the world offered in exchange. She thought about the woman she had been when she arrived, the careful one, the one who kept her feelings at a distance from her face and her face at a professional distance from her heart. The one who had come to rebuild quietly, and had intended to do it quietly, and had walked through a corridor with laundry and had a child run to her, and had looked down and chosen to crouch down and not look away. That choice, that one choice in a corridor had become every morning at the kitchen table, and every evening in the library, and every hand held on a garden path, and every cup placed in its position, and every drawing with 3 named figures, and every moment of every day of the life she had built inside these walls. She was not the careful one anymore. She was the one who stayed. She was ready. On the morning Choi was called into the office, Min-jae was standing at the window rather than sitting at the desk. That alone told Choi everything. "Close the door," Min-jae said. Choi closed the door. He stood in the center of the room, and he waited because 14 years had taught him that the quality of Min-jae's silences was always worth reading before responding to. This silence had the quality of something enormous and settled, not turbulent, not conflicted, decided. "I'm stepping back," Min-jae said, still looking at the city, not reducing, not managing from a distance, stepping back fully. The operation, the network, the city relationships, the associates, all of it. He paused. "I want to give it to you." The office was completely still. Choi looked at the back of the man he had followed for 14 years. The lean shoulders, the straight spine. The stillness that was not the stillness of control this time, but the stillness of someone who has put something down and is feeling the absence of its weight. "All of it," Choi said. Not a question. A confirmation. "All of it," Min-jae said. "Why now?" Choi said. Min-jae turned from the window. He looked at Choi directly, and his face was the most open it had been in any professional context in 14 years. Not the boardroom face, not the operation face. Something underneath both of those that was simply a man who had arrived at something true, and was saying it plainly. "Because Seo-yeon is 7 years old," he said, "and I have missed more of her life than I am willing to miss of what comes next. Because there is a woman in this house who came here carrying something broken and built something whole, and I am not willing to lose what she built by being unavailable to it." He held Choi's gaze. "And because you have been ready for this for 4 years, we have both known it. I have been holding it, because letting go of what you build is harder than building it." He paused. "I am done holding it." Choi was quiet for a long time. "This will take months to transfer properly," he said finally. "I know," Min-jae said. "Start today." Choi nodded once. He went to the door. He stopped. He turned back. "Min-jae, see," he said, "the formal address. The one that carried the full weight of 14 years every time it was used, the address that meant, I am speaking to you now as the person who has known you longest, and will say what others won't. What you built in that kitchen," Choi said. "The table, the cups, the child who places them before anyone wakes up, the woman who stays." He paused. "It is more than the city. It is more than any of this." He looked at him directly. "I am honored to carry what you are putting down." Min-jae looked at his right hand of 14 years. "Take care of it," he said. "With everything I have," Choi said. He left. Min-jae stood at the window and looked at the city for a long time. 20 years of building, of decisions made in this room at this window, looking at that city, of leverage and alliance and the controlled application of everything he had to keep the things inside these walls safe. It was Choi's now. He was not sorry. He was not entirely without grief either. You did not build 20 years of something and walk away from it without grief. The grief was real and correct, and he sat with it the way he sat with everything that was real and correct completely, without managing it, letting it be what it was. Then he went downstairs. Seo-yeon was at the kitchen table with the bird journal, and the drawing was still there beside his cup, and when he sat down, Annabelle looked at him across the table with the eyes that read him better than any report Choi had ever placed on his desk. "You told him," she said. "Yes," he said. She looked at him carefully. "How do you feel?" He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "Like a man who has just done the right thing," he said, "and is learning that the right thing and the easy thing are not the same, and that is fine." Annabelle held his gaze. "It's fine," she said quietly. "You're allowed to grieve it." He looked at her. "I know," he said. "I am." Seo-yeon, writing in the journal without looking up. "Hyun-ja was on time this morning. The anomaly has been resolved." Min-jae looked at his daughter. Something moved through him that was grief and gratitude and love in the same current, and he let all of it be present simultaneously, because this was what he was learning, that the feelings did not have to be managed into a single, acceptable one. They could all exist, grief and gratitude together, the cost and the rightness of the cost held in the same hands. He drank his coffee. The drawing was on the table. The morning held. "Here is the thing nobody is talking about, and I need the comment section to go to war over it right now. He built an empire from nothing, 20 years, and he handed it to someone else for a kitchen table and a third cup of coffee and a drawing with 3 names on it. Some of you are going to say that is the most romantic thing a powerful man has ever done. Some of you are going to say, a man who walks away from what he built is not a man to be trusted with anything, including a family. Both sides get in the comments. Like this video. Subscribe if you haven't. We are not close to done." Mrs. Park found Annabelle in the garden 2 days later. Tea, as always. The kettle perpetually ready, the cups always warm. The particular wisdom of a woman who understood that the most important conversations in this house had always happened over something held in both hands. They stood at the rose wall, the city beyond the estate walls, going about its business. The empire in transition, Choi's name beginning to replace Min-jae's in the conversations that mattered, the shift happening quietly and correctly, the way Min-jae had designed it to happen. "He told you," Mrs. Park said. "Yes," Annabelle said. And I told him he was allowed to grieve it," Annabelle said. "He is. He built it. Walking away from something you built costs something even when you are certain it is right." Mrs. Park looked at her. "You are not going anywhere," she said. "Not a question." "No," Annabelle said. "But you are not yet fully here either," Mrs. Park said. The specific, gentle directness of a woman who had been watching this household for 17 years and had decided that the time for being indirect about important things was finished. You are in this house. You are in this child's life. You are in his, in whatever the correct word is, for what you are in his life. She paused. "But there is still a part of you that is careful. That is managing how much you let yourself have. That is holding something back in case it is taken." Annabelle looked at the roses. "The contract says nanny," she said quietly. "The contract is wrong," Mrs. Park said. "I know." "Does he know you know?" "Yes," Annabelle said. "Then what are you both waiting for?" Mrs. Park said, not unkindly, with the directness of love. Annabelle held her cup with both hands. She thought about the library the night before. Part 2 ended. About the hand over hers. About the eyes across the kitchen table every morning that said the thing the voice had not yet fully arrived at. About her own voice that had said, "I am staying," but had not yet said the rest of it, the larger rest of it, the part that went beyond, staying into the territory of chosen and permanent and mine. "We are getting there," she said. "Get there faster," Mrs. Park said pleasantly. "You have a 7-year-old who has been patient long enough." Annabelle looked at her. She's going to ask me something, Annabelle said. I can feel it. She's been building toward it for weeks. Yes, Mrs. Park said simply. You know what it is, Annabelle said. I have some idea, Mrs. Park said. Are you going to tell me? No, Mrs. Park said. Some things need to arrive the way they arrive, without preparation, in their own time. She finished her tea. But I will tell you this. When it arrives, don't be careful with the answer. She is not asking a careful question. She deserves an answer that matches it. She took the cups inside. Annabelle stood at the rose wall alone, and looked at the city, and thought about being careful, about how long she had been careful, about the specific discipline of a woman who had learned in Atlanta that hope unguarded was hope available to be broken, and had protected herself with carefulness, ever since, careful about how much she loved this house, careful about how much she showed, careful about the words she used and the ones she didn't, and the distance she maintained between what she felt and what she allowed to be visible. She thought about Seo-yeon placing the drawing on the table. Appa, Belle, Seo-yeon. Not careful. True. She went inside. She had a 7-year-old to find. Jun Seo came to dinner on a Friday. He was the only person outside the estate walls who knew Min-jae completely, the 22-year friendship, the man who had stayed the night Seo-yeon's mother left when everyone else had given space, because space was what the situation seemed to call for, and Jun Seo had understood that space was the last thing Min-jae needed, and had stayed anyway and had not mentioned it since because that was the kind of friend he was. He arrived with wine and the easy warmth of someone who belonged wherever he was, and the evening moved through dinner with a quality that was new in this house, relaxed, unmanaged, the three of them, and a guest, and Mrs. Park briefly in the kitchen doorway, and the drawing still on the table, and Seo-yeon explaining Harold's recent behavioral development to Jun Seo with the focused intensity of someone who had found in him a genuinely interested audience. He has established a clear morning routine, Seo-yeon said. Arrival at 6:47, window survey lasting approximately 4 minutes, followed by feeding activity, then a period I am categorizing as social display directed at Hyun-ja. He's showing off, Jun Seo said. That is not the scientific term, Seo-yeon said. What is the scientific term? Courtship behavior, Seo-yeon said. But showing off is also accurate. Jun Seo looked at Min-jae across the table with an expression that said, your daughter. Min-jae looked at his coffee with an expression that said, I know. After dinner, after Annabelle had taken Seo-yeon upstairs and the house had gone to the particular quiet of a child's bedtime, Jun Seo sat across the kitchen table from Min-jae and looked at him with the eyes of 22 years. You're happy, he said, like a discovery, like something he had been looking for across all those years and had just found. I am getting there, Min-jae said. I have known you for 22 years, Jun Seo said. I watched you build the operation. I watched you marry. I watched you become a father. I watched the marriage end, and I watched what that cost, and I stayed the night because I knew what silence does to people who are not built for asking for help. He looked at him steadily. I have never seen you look the way you look when she walks into a room. Min-jae looked at his cup. Don't, he said. I'm not going to, Jun Seo said. One thing, that's all. He held Min-jae's gaze. Whatever you are afraid of losing by saying it out loud, you already have it. The saying of it is just the permission for both of you to stop being careful. He paused. She deserves the words. Not just the hand, not just the eyes, the words. Min-jae was quiet. She came here broken, he said. She rebuilt inside these walls. She did it quietly and completely, and she built something I did not plan for and would not undo for anything in this world. He looked at the drawing on the table. I know what I want to say. I am still finding the way to say it that is equal to what it means. Find it faster, Jun Seo said. You have a 7-year-old who has already said it in colored pencil and put it on the breakfast table. You are the only one still arriving. He finished his wine. He left. Min-jae sat at the kitchen table alone. the drawing in front of him, the 3 cups on the shelf, the city outside, the empire in transition, the house quiet and warm around him. He was the only one still arriving. He was getting there. He sat with the drawing on the table and the 3 cups on the shelf, and the city outside, and he thought about what Seo had said, whatever you are afraid of losing by saying it out loud. You already have it. And he thought about what Mrs. Park had said, and about 14 years of Choi, and 20 years of the operation, and 38 days of a woman carrying laundry through the wrong corridor at the right moment, and what all of it had done to every calculation he had ever made about who he was, and what this life was going to look like. He was getting there. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow, he would begin arriving properly. The botanical garden on Saturday was the 3 of them together for the first time without professional purpose, no documentation project with a deadline, no specific species Seo-yeon had scheduled. Just the garden, and the morning, and Min-jae, with no calls forwarded from Choi, because Choi's operation did not require his input today or most days anymore, and that was the correct and grieved and accepted state of things. Seo-yeon moved through the garden with the focused joy of someone in their rightful element. She knew half the staff by name. She had opinions about the labeling system in the East Wing that she had communicated to the head botanist in a letter that was so precisely argued the botanist had implemented 2 of her 3 suggestions. She was 7 years old. She was entirely her father's daughter. Min-jae walked behind her and Ambw and watched them move through the garden together. Seo-yeon stopping, pointing, explaining. Ambw crouching to her level and receiving the information with the genuine attention that was one of the things about her. He had catalogued early and never stopped cataloging. The way she listened. The way she made the person she was listening to feel that what they were saying was the most important thing being said anywhere. He watched Ambw's face while Seo-yeon talked about the migratory patterns of the bird from the book, the one that carried 2 countries, that belonged to the journey between them. And he watched Ambw's expression do the thing it did when something landed in her at depth. The slight softening at the eyes, the quality of stillness that was not the managed stillness of professional composure but the genuine stillness of someone receiving something that mattered. He thought about Seo. Whatever you are afraid of losing by saying it out loud, you already have it. He thought about the library, about the night when they had sat at the window seat and she had said, I am staying, and he had said, I know what I want to call it, and then had not said the rest because the rest was enormous and the enormousness of it required him to arrive at it properly, at the right moment, in the right way. He was nearly there. The walk back through the botanical garden to the car was quiet and warm, and Seo-yeon walked ahead of them with the field notes under her arm, and she did not look back once. She had documented 3 new observations, confirmed the wing structure relationship between the garden bird and Harold's family, and decided the botanical garden needed a more comprehensive labeling system in the East Wing, which she would communicate to the head botanist by letter this week. She was fully occupied. She was also, very deliberately, not looking back at the 2 adults walking behind her holding hands on the garden path. She had learned, somewhere around the age of 5, that the best way to let important things happen was to look away from them at the critical moment. Not because you were not paying attention, because you were paying the right kind of attention. The kind that gave things room to arrive. She turned once, briefly, at the garden gate. Min-jae and Ambw were looking at a plant she had pointed out earlier, their heads close together, his hand still holding hers. Both of them reading the small information placard, with the specific attention of people who were not thinking about the plant at all. Seo-yeon turned back. She opened her field notes. She wrote, Garden visit productive. New species confirmed. Wing structure documented. Other significant observations pending further review. She capped her pencil. She went through the gate. 3 weeks into the transfer, Choi came to find Seo-yeon. Not Min-jae. Not Ambw. Seo-yeon, specifically, at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, because she had a school presentation, and he had decided, without telling anyone, without asking permission, without calculating the professional optics of a man in a charcoal suit sitting in a primary school classroom on a Tuesday afternoon, he had simply decided to go. The presentation was on migratory birds. Of course it was. 3 panels, colored pencil, the bird's route drawn connecting 2 continents with careful precision. The research compiled over 18 months of Saturday botanical garden visits and 3 comprehensive field guides and 1 slim book with a dark cover whose thesis Seo-yeon had internalized completely. The bird does not choose one country. It carries both. The journey is the home. Ambw was in the 3rd row when Seo-yeon walked to the front of the classroom and arranged her panels with the focused composure of someone who had been preparing for this and was ready. She looked out at the audience. Ambw, 3rd row, smiling, and beside Ambw, in a chair that had not been there when the room was arranged and that someone had brought from the hallway and placed at the end of the row because the row was full and there was no other place, Director Choi. Dark charcoal suit, wire-rimmed glasses, both hands folded in his lap. Sitting in a primary school chair that was too small for him with the specific dignity of a man who has decided the chair does not matter and he is going to sit in it regardless. He was looking at Seo-yeon with an expression that his face had never produced in a professional context. Open, unguarded. The face underneath the 14 years of controlled precision. A man who had come to a school presentation because a child mattered to him and he had decided that was sufficient reason. Seo-yeon saw him. Her presentation did not falter. She was her father's daughter. But something in her face shifted the corner of her mouth, the specific light in the dark almond eyes, and she looked at him for exactly 2 seconds before she began speaking, and those 2 seconds said, "You came, I see you, I am filing this permanently." She presented for 14 minutes. She answered 3 questions from the teacher with the patience of someone who has already thought past the questions being asked. She received her assessment card. She walked back through the classroom to where Ambw and Choi were standing in the doorway of the hall. She stopped in front of Choi. She looked up at him. She took his hand. Just took it. The way she took Annabelle's arm in the corridor 2 years ago, the decisive claiming gesture of a child who has made a decision about a person and is communicating it through contact rather than language. "You came," she said. "Yes," Choi said. "You didn't have to," she said. "I know," he said. She looked up at him with the eyes that saw everything, that had always seen everything. "Thank you, Director Choi," she said, the full name, the formal address, the gravity of a 7-year-old saying something she meant completely. Choi looked at this child holding his hand in a primary school hallway, at the research panels under her other arm, at the face that was Min-jae's jaw, and Min-jae's eyes, and something entirely her own in the expression, something that had no antecedent, something she had arrived at herself. "Thank you for letting me," he said. Ambw watched from 3 feet away and said nothing. She did not need to. That evening, Choi came to the estate and told Min-jae he had gone. Min-jae listened to all of it, the chair from the hallway, the primary school room, the hand without interrupting. When Choi finished, Min-jae was quiet for 4 seconds. "She took your hand," he said. "Yes," Choi said. "She does that when she's decided," Min-jae said. "I know," Choi said. "I understand now what it means. When she decides." Another silence. The kind that had 14 years in it, and a fracture in it, and the slow work of repair that was happening one conversation at a time. "The transfer," Min-jae said. "How long?" 3 more weeks, Choi said. "After that it is mine entirely." "Good," Min-jae said. He looked at Choi. "After the transfer is complete, you will need someone. For the role you are stepping into. The city relationships require a right hand who understands the operation from the inside." "I have someone in mind," Choi said. "I know you do," Min-jae said. "You have had someone in mind for 2 years. Appoint them." Choi nodded. He went to the door. "Min-jae see," he said. One more time, the formal address, the weight of it. "I sat in a primary school chair today," Choi said. that was brought from the hallway because there was no room, in a charcoal suit. And it was... He stopped. He looked at Min-jae. It was the most important meeting I have attended in 14 years. Min-jae looked at his right hand of 14 years. I know, he said. Choi left. Min-jae sat alone in the room that used to be his office, and would very shortly be something else. Seo-yeon had ideas about it. A project she had been describing in detail for 2 weeks. Something involving the east-facing window and its relationship to Harold's flight path, and he thought about Choi in a primary school chair. He thought about what it meant to be decided on. By a 7-year-old in a hallway. By a woman in a corridor 2 years ago who had crouched down and said, "Look at me, are you okay?" By the specific unstoppable force of people who chose without hesitation and held on. He was decided on. He had been since the beginning. He was still arriving at how to say it properly. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow he would be ready. This story has 3 parts, and this is the last one, and I need you to tell me right now in the comments. Were you Team Choi from the beginning, or did he have to earn it? Because that man sitting in a too small chair in a primary school is either the redemption arc of the year, or it came too easily. Both sides. Now, like this video, subscribe. We are in the final stretch, and it is going to take everything you have. The night before Seo-yeon asked her question, Min-jae found Ambw in the library. Their library. The room that had held more of the real conversations between them than any other space in the estate. The room with the broken-spined books and the window seat and the city visible beyond the glass. She was there when he arrived, and she looked up from the book in her lap and she set it down because she could read from the specific quality of his entry that this was not a passing through. He sat beside her on the window seat. Not across the room, beside her. The way he had been sitting beside her for months now. The distance that had been so carefully maintained in the beginning simply gone. Replaced by the proximity of people who have stopped pretending they want to be far from each other. They looked at the city together. Seo was right, Min-jae said. She looked at him. About what? She said. About arriving, he said. About being the last one. He looked at the city. Seo-yeon put the drawing on the table. You said I am staying. I have been... He stopped. He breathed. I have been finding the way to say the rest of it in a way that is equal to what it means. I didn't want to say it wrong. I didn't want to arrive at it and have it be insufficient for what it actually is. Ambw looked at him. You don't have to perform it, she said quietly. It doesn't need to be equal to its size. It just needs to be true. He looked at her. You came here broken, he said. You rebuilt in these walls, in this garden, at that table, around that child, around me. In some way I did not plan for, and would not have known to want, if you had asked me 2 years ago. He held her gaze. You are the most important thing that has happened in this house since Seo-yeon was born. And that is not a romantic statement. That is a true statement. He paused. You are not the nanny. You have not been the nanny for a long time. I do not have a word in any language I speak for what you actually are, because the words I know are insufficient, and I have been waiting to find better ones. He looked at her directly. What I know is that this house is not the house without you. That kitchen table is not the table. That child is not the child she is without you in it. And I am not. He stopped. His jaw tightened slightly. I am not the man I am in this house when you are not in it. The library was completely still. Ambw looked at him for a long time. She reached out and put her hand over his on the armrest. I know, she said. I have known for a long time. I know you know, he said. I needed you to hear it. I'm hearing it, she said. His hand turned over beneath hers. He held it. They sat at the library window with the city outside and the house quiet around them, and the drawing on the kitchen table and the cups on the shelf and all of it, the corridor and the laundry basket and the third cup and the files. And the phone calls at 3 a.m., and the fractures, and the repairs, and the botanical garden, and the hand on the garden path, and all of it present in the room with them, acknowledged, real, the full cost of everything they had built visible and chosen and held. Tomorrow, Annabelle said. Yes, he said. She's going to ask me something tomorrow, she said. I can feel it. She's been building toward it. He was quiet. I know, he said. You know what it is, she said. Yes, he said. Are you ready? She said. He looked at their hands, his over hers, the same gesture as always, the same language. I have been ready since she put the drawing on the table, he said. Annabelle looked at him. She turned her face back to the window. The city was enormous and beautiful, and no longer entirely his, and entirely unimportant compared to the 7-year-old asleep down the hall, who had been building toward a question for weeks, and was going to ask it tomorrow. They sat until the city began its shift toward morning. Neither of them moved. Neither of them needed to. Morning. The kitchen filled with light. Harold at the window. Hyunja arriving at 6:51, which Seo-yeon documented as within normal parameters. The drawing on the table, centered, permanent. 3 cups in their positions. The bird journal open to the current page with its morning entries already begun. Breakfast moved the way breakfast moved, the ordinary machinery of a morning that was also underneath the ordinary, charged with the knowledge that something was coming. Min-jae felt it. He could see that Annabelle felt it. Seo-yeon ate her breakfast and wrote in the journal and said what she had to say about Harold's morning behavior, with the focused calm of someone who is saving something for the right moment and knows the right moment is not yet. After breakfast, Min-jae went upstairs. Not to the office was Choi's now, the transfer complete 2 days ago. The room already being cleared of the things that had been his and would need to be moved or archived or simply carried into whatever came next. He went to the east-facing room that Seo-yeon wanted to convert into a proper research space with a window relationship to Harold's flight path. He sat in the empty room in the morning light, and he waited. He did not know he was waiting. He was. Annabelle was in her office at 9:15 when Seo-yeon knocked. She always knocked. The knock of a child who had understood thresholds since she was 4, who had her father's innate respect for the announcement of presence before the crossing of a boundary. Come in, Annabelle said. Seo-yeon came in. She closed the door. She sat in the small chair across the desk, the same chair she had occupied at 6 years old when she had asked about Atlanta, when she had asked whether her grandmother's humming was still teaching, when she had conducted the formal interview that preceded her decision. She sat with the same straight-backed purposefulness of someone who had come with something specific and intended to deliver it. She put the drawing on the desk, the one with 3 named figures. Appa, Belle, Seo-yeon. I put a copy on the table, she said. This one is yours. I made 2. Annabelle looked at the drawing. She looked at Seo-yeon. I have 2 questions, Seo-yeon said. I need you to answer both of them with the true version, not the careful version. All right, Annabelle said. Seo-yeon looked at her directly, with the dark almond eyes that had been reading the world with absolute accuracy since before she had the language to describe what she saw. Are you staying? She said. Not on the contract, not as the nanny. Here, in this house, with us, permanently. The office was completely still. Annabelle looked at this child, 7 years old. The child who had run, who had chosen, who had designed every ritual that held this family together, who had placed the cup and mapped the vents and documented the birds and written, "We are still choosing in a journal," and put a drawing on the breakfast table with 3 names on it, as though naming the thing would make it impossible to deny. Yes, Annabelle said. I am staying, permanently. This is my home. She stopped. Something moved across her face that was enormous and could not be managed, and she did not try to manage it. You are mine, she said. You have been mine since a corridor 2 years ago when you ran to me and held on, and I looked down at you and I chose you back. That does not have an end date. That does not have a contract. She held Seo-yeon's gaze with everything she had. I am staying. I was always going to stay. Seo-yeon received this, filed it. The way she filed everything that mattered completely, with the absolute certainty of a child who has been waiting for the truth and recognizes it the moment it arrives, because truth has a specific quality that managed answers do not, and she has always been able to tell the difference. She nodded once. "Second question," she said. "Ask it," Annabelle said. Seo-yeon looked at her. "Can I call you Mum?" The word arrived in the room the way the third cup had arrived on the table 2 years ago, not dropped, not announced, placed, deliberate. The culmination of a long and patient and entirely certain journey toward the thing that had always been true. Annabelle did not answer immediately. Not because she was uncertain. She had not been uncertain since approximately day 40 of her time in this house. She did not answer immediately because the answer was the largest thing she had been given to say in her entire life, and she was not going to say it from the managed place. She was going to say it from the true place. The place Mrs. Park had told her to come from. The place that had nothing careful in it. She came around the desk. She crouched in front of Seo-yeon's chair. The same crouch as the corridor. The same level. Both hands coming up to cup the small face. The small golden beige face with the blunt bob and the dark almond eyes and the rounded cheeks and the expression of a child who has asked the most important question of her life and is waiting for the most important answer and is not afraid because she already knows the answer and she just needs to hear it said. Annabelle looked at her. "You can call me whatever feels true," she said. Her voice was not entirely steady. She did not try to make it steady. "And whatever you call me, I am it. Completely. Without condition. Without an expiry. Not because of what the contract says or what the house says or what anyone outside these walls says." She held the small face in her hands. "Whatever feels true." Seo-yeon looked at her. "Then I'll call you Mum," she said. Annabelle pulled her in. She held this child, the child who ran, the child who chose, the child who had seen all of this from the beginning, in a corridor with dropped laundry and bare feet and a white dress and arms that wrapped around a stranger's legs and refused to let go. She held her fully and completely, and she did not manage a single part of what she felt, and what she felt was the most permanent thing she had ever felt in her life. The specific permanence of something that has been true for a long time and has just been given its right name. Down the hall, in the east-facing room with the morning light, Min-jae heard the door close. He heard the silence that followed it. He could not hear the words. The walls of the Kang estate were thick, but he heard something else. He heard the quality of the silence shift. He heard it move from waiting into arrived. He heard the acoustic change of a room in which something enormous and permanent and completely true had just been said. He sat in the empty east-facing room. His eyes were wet. He did not wipe them. He sat with what his daughter had just done, and what the woman down the hall had just answered, and he thought, she ran to the right person. She always knew. From the first moment in that corridor, she knew. She was just waiting for everyone else to be ready. He breathed. He closed his eyes. He let it be everything it was. That evening dinner was the four of them. Mrs. Park invited to the table for the first time, sitting as the witness she had always been, receiving the honor of the meal, with the quiet dignity of someone who had earned every moment of it through 17 years of tea and directness, and the particular love of a woman who shows up with what is needed before anyone knows they need it. The meal was ordinary. The conversation moved through Harold's continuing behavioral development, a book Seo-yeon was reading, something Min-jae had seen in the city that morning on his first genuinely unscheduled walk through Havenridge in 20 years. And then, in the middle of a sentence about Harold's latest activity, Seo-yeon said, "Mum, do you think Harold knows Hyunja prefers the left side of the ledge?" The table went quiet. Not the silence of something wrong. The silence of something that has just landed in its right place, and the room is adjusting to the weight of it and the rightness of it simultaneously. Min-jae looked at his coffee cup. Mrs. Park looked at her plate. Annabelle looked at Seo-yeon with the eyes that were not entirely dry. "I think Harold notices everything about Hyunja," Annabelle said. "He's very attentive." "That is consistent with courtship behavior," Seo-yeon agreed, and went back to her dinner. The table breathed again. The word had been used. It had been ordinary. It had been the most extraordinary ordinary thing said in this house in 2 years. Nobody said anything about it. Nobody needed to. After dinner, after Seo-yeon was in bed and Mrs. Park had gone home and the house had settled into the quiet that belonged to it at this hour, Min-jae found Annabelle in the kitchen. She was washing the cups. The 3 cups from this morning. The ritual completed. The day closing the way it opened. He came and stood beside her. He picked up a cloth. He dried the cup she washed and handed to him. They worked in the quiet kitchen together. The estate dark around them. The city outside. The empire choice now. The transfer complete. The 20 years set down. The table remaining. He dried the 3rd cup. He held it for a moment. The ceramic was warm from the washing. Small. The cups Seo-yeon had chosen at 5 years old from the kitchen cabinet, with the specific deliberateness of a child selecting something that was going to matter for a long time. She called you Mum tonight, he said. Yes, Annabelle said. At the table, in a sentence about Harold. Yes. As though it was already the word, he said. As though it had always been the word. It has always been the word, Annabelle said quietly. She just needed to say it. He looked at the cup in his hands. I heard it this morning, he said, from the east room. Not the word, the silence after. She looked at him. How did it sound? She asked. He set the cup on the shelf in its position. The position Seo-yeon established. The correct one. He turned to face her. Like something that had been true for 2 years finally having the right name, he said. She looked at him. His eyes were doing the thing they did, giving everything away while his face stayed still, the language of him that lived entirely in the eyes, the language she had learned to read months ago, and had been reading every morning at the kitchen table ever since. She saw it. Everything he had not yet found the full words for. The thing Junseo had told him she deserved. The thing that was too large for the words he had available and that he had been traveling toward for months, and was now standing in the kitchen in the dark with the cups on the shelf and the drawing on the table and a 7-year-old asleep down the hall, who had just used a word that changed the acoustic of this house, permanently standing at the arrival of Min-jae, she said. He looked at her. I know, she said, receiving what his eyes said. The full weight of it received, not the managed version, the complete version. I have always known. I know you know, he said. I am saying it anyway. She waited. He held her gaze. You are not the nanny, he said. You have not been the nanny for a long time. You are the person who put the dressing on the cut and stayed at 2 a.m. and knows Harold's behavioral patterns and reads my silence correctly every time, and has made my daughter into the fullest version of herself, and has made me. He stopped. His jaw tightened. Not with control. With the effort of arriving at the right words for the right thing. You have made me the man who sits in the chair, he said. I was not that man before you were in this house. I am that man now. Entirely. Permanently. The kitchen was completely still. And I am asking you to stay, he said. The eyes open. All the architecture down. Just him. Not on a contract. Not as anything with a title. As what you actually are. In this house. In this life. Permanently. Annabelle looked at him for a long time. She thought about Atlanta. About the corridor. About the laundry basket on the marble floor. About the first cup of tea Mrs. Park made, without asking. About the library and the window seat and the hand over hers in the dark and the botanical garden and the hand on the garden path and all of it. The entire accumulated weight of 2 years of building something she had not planned for and could not undo. She reached out. She took his face in both hands. The same gesture she had used in the corridor 2 years ago on his daughter's face, gently, carefully, reading what was there. She looked at him. I'm already staying, she said. I told you that. I meant it then, and I mean it now, and I will mean it. Every morning I put the cup on the table, and every night I sit at this window, and every year of everything that comes next. She held his gaze. But thank you for saying it. She was right that you needed to say it. He looked at her. She's always right, he said. Yes, Annabelle said. She is. He covered her hands with his, the same gesture, the 3rd cup gesture, simply present, choosing without ceremony, And they stood in the kitchen, in the dark, with the city outside and the house around them, and the drawing on the table and the cups on the shelf, and Seo-yeon asleep down the hall with the bird journal on the nightstand, open to the page that said, "We are still here, we are still choosing," both lines underlined. They stood in it. They let it be what it was, large and real and permanent, and not yet fully speakable in all its dimensions, and not needing to be. The eyes said the rest. Morning. Dawn came through the east-facing windows the way it always did, gold and clean, the particular light that made the whole house feel like a possibility rather than an obligation. Harold arrived at the window at 6:47, precise, consistent, entirely himself. Hyunja on the left side of the ledge, as always, Miso and Duri on the right. Seo-yeon was in the kitchen at 6:15. She took out 3 cups. She placed them. She sat down. She opened the journal to a fresh page. She wrote the date. She wrote the bird count. She stopped. She looked at the drawing on the table. The 3 named figures. The house. The birds. The connected hands. She picked up her pencil. At the very bottom of the fresh page, below the bird count, below the margin drawings she had not yet made, she wrote one word. She looked at it. She underlined it once. She put the pencil down. Ambw came in at 6:43. She saw Seo-yeon. She saw the 3 cups. She sat. "Good morning, baby," she said. "Good morning, Mum," Seo-yeon said. Ordinary. Easy. The word already home in the sentence as though it had always been there. At 7:23, Min-jae's footsteps came down the corridor. He came in. He looked at the table. 3 cups. The drawing. Seo-yeon with the journal. Ambw looking at him as he entered with the eyes that had received everything he said last night and were holding it and would hold it permanently. He sat in the chair. Seo-yeon poured his coffee with both hands. He received it with both hands. He looked across the table at Ambw. She looked at him. His eyes said the thing that could not yet be fully spoken, to stay safe. The enormous, permanent, real thing that lived in the chest and was in the hands around the cup, and in the drawing on the table and in the word a 7-year-old had written at the bottom of a fresh journal page. She received it. All of it. Her eyes said it back. Underneath everything. Underneath the warmth and the morning, and the birds at the window, and the cups in their places, and the ordinary beautiful machinery of a day, beginning in a house that had learned to hold them the cost of, all of it was visible. It was visible in the careful way he held the cup, in the way she looked at the drawing, rather than at him when the feeling got too large for the room. In the specific quality of the silence that sometimes fell between them that was not empty but full of the things that were still finding their way to the surface. It was not a perfect ending. It was a true one, which was always, in this house, the only kind worth having. Seo-yeon turned the journal and slid it across the table. She pointed at the bottom of the page. Min-jae looked. Ambw looked. One word, underlined once, in the careful handwriting of a 7-year-old who had understood the correct word for this place and these people and this morning and all the mornings before it and all the mornings still to come. Home. Outside, Harold was at the window. Seo-yeon began to count. If this story held you across 3 parts, if any single moment across this entire journey broke you open or healed something in you or made you argue in the comments at midnight, this is where you say it. Like this video right now, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment with the one moment you will never forget. Was it the corridor? The 3rd cup? The 3 a.m. phone call? Choi in the primary school chair? The question Seo-yeon asked? The answer that said whatever feels true? The eyes across the kitchen table? The word at the bottom of the journal page? Tell me, every single comment. I will read them all. And here is the final question. The comment war to end all comment wars across this entire series. A man built an empire and handed it to someone else. A woman came to rebuild quietly and built a family she never planned for. A child ran down a corridor at 6 years old and chose correctly, and then waited 2 years with extraordinary patience for the adults to catch up. Who was the bravest? The man who let go, the woman who stayed, or the child who never once doubted how it was going to end? Drop it. Fight about it. This is the last chapter. Thank you for watching She Chose Her. All 3 parts. Every minute. Every cup. It was worth every word.